favorite poetry reading,
Yeah.
Sorry, I mean, like, it's a pretty much like, Odia poetry or Gujarati, Marathi poetry scene, very informal.
Absolutely.
Basu, please continue.
So,
Introduce Basu.
good evening, everyone, and a warm welcome to the Hearth Within. We are very, very happy and grateful to be celebrating this wonderful book that we have with us today, that is Rivers Going Home, published by Red River, 71 Poets in Solidarity, and edited by none other than Ashwani Kumar. And we have a wonderful panel of poets here to celebrate the multilingual spirit, the multi-local spirit, and of course the spiritual spirit that the book has. So we have a very dynamic book, and we have a very dynamic panel of poets. Before I exactly begin, I would like to quote the editor himself in the fabulous introduction to the book that he has come up with. And he says that Rivers Going Home is not about mighty ancient rivers, but about an extended family of small rivers, rivulets, and streams of speech and its experiences, each reflecting ourselves and our histories, our separate yet entangled lives that flow together through familiar and unfamiliar neighborhoods and villages. So this marvelous bringing together of the local and the global, and the finding of a common metaphor in the idea of rivers and home is, I think, what characterizes each particular poem in the book. And to talk about the book, I would invite the editor himself. So over to you, Ashwani sir, to talk about how the book emerged in your mind and into the world. Over to you.
Well, it's a really embarrassing situation for me. I guess, Menka is here, Suhit, everyone is here. And I'm not a person, those who know me for years, they know that I often don't talk about myself, not even talk about my work and my poetry. Suhit knows it. Wherever I go and curate a poetry festival, I never read there. People ask me, Ashwani, why don't you read? I said, I believe in unselfish love, If I don't read, I give a space to somebody else, So for me, let me begin with this word, that this book I haven't edited. This book is edited by also by 71 poets. It's done by everyone. People who are not part of this book, they are also part of this editing. And also this whole creative landscape. Rather than I remember when we started thinking about names of the book, River Going Home, and I gave some 10 names to the publisher. And finally, we decided that, Rivers Going Home rather than Rivers Coming Home. So you can see there is, a whole feminist, and also a larger ecological approach, as I have mentioned in my small little edit note. But I would begin, thanking everyone here, each one of you, individually and collectively. The book is done by everyone. All our 71 poets, and also 30 translators. Let us not forget that people like Anamika, people like Sachidanandan, Jayant Parmar has done fabulous translation of Pravasini Mahakudi, a leading feminist poet from Odisha. About her, many of us don't know in our urban spaces. Basudev Bhai is here. He knows Mahadevi Mahakur's work. So in that sense, this book is also significant for us, particularly for me, kind of an emotional journey. That's why the book is dedicated to Mangalesh Dabral. So you can find in the book, in the very launch of the book, on the second death anniversary of Mangalesh, we spoke about how music and raga was key to Mangalesh poetry and his poetic world. Mangalesh was in, and Mangalesh kept telling me that, Ashwani, don't let it go. I have his emails, etc., etc. Even from the hospital, Mangalesh was keen that the book must come out. The book must see the world. So therefore, this book is dedicated to Mangalesh. And then the rivers are there, rivers of languages. We have 15 languages in the book. I wanted to include more and more languages here, not just one language. Maybe in the next version, maybe some other time, we can do a much bigger anthology and much bigger project of rivers, And also here, when I talk about river, I guess I want to remember and acknowledge three outstanding poets here, including Sachidanandan, Arundhati, Surumanyam, and Brian Turner. They were, I mean, like so gracefully, they supported me. I mean, like 2 years down the line, the book was still not out. I started receiving messages. Menka is here. When people started writing to me, what happened to the book? It went into the sinkhole. Kahan chala gaya? Kachre mein chala gaya? What did you do? I said that, no, I guess, the book is happening. Must will happen. Rivers will come. And so in that sense, personally for me, it's a journey. It's a journey, the journey in terms of languages, journey in terms of, translation. So I have always enjoyed, translation, and we run this collective, Indian Novels Collective. The book is also important. This anthology is about friendship, about friendship. Friendship, between friends, amongst friends, dosti. I always say solidarity, dosti, mitrata, karuna. I mean, like, there are so many, emotions involved here in the book. It's not like usual anthology where, you are excluded, you are included. I mean, like, I don't know what criteria is there. Here, there is only one criteria, as Menka at the very outset reminded us. This is part of the first Instagram poetry reading that we did in the country during the lockdown. That's the only thing. So there is an element of accident. There is an element of, tragic history here. Above all, what I would like to conclude here, I don't want to take much time because I want to invite two very outstanding supporters, friends, and they themselves are readers. Basudev Sunani. The first mail after the reading got over, 15 days of reading, I received from Basudev Bhai. And Basudev Bhai wrote to me that, Ashwani, you must publish what you have done. Collect poems and let's do it. Initially, we planned, I confess to all of you in public, that we wanted to do a multilingual volume. So I designed it, and we thought that we will have 4 editors rather than just 1 editor. But we couldn't do it. 1 year down the line, publishing industry went down so badly that nobody was interested in this very expansive, project. So back to here, Basudev Bhai is here, and Jayant Parmar Bhai Sahab, he made especially four drawings he sent, 4 paintings he sent to me. और उन्होंने कहा कोई भी choose कर लीजिए. और बिल्कुल we chose it, and today we are here. And also a very special word of thanks to Divya Jyoti Sharma. It won't have happened without Divya Jyoti's, friendship, his support, his trust. He, in fact, walked to my Bombay house. And accidentally he came to Bombay. I just sent him a message, Divya, let's do it. He said that, yeah, why not? He came and saw the book, the PDF file. He said that wonderful book. And the rest is in your hand. You can see each page we worked on. And we are also and the print is almost over. Let me share with you. It has done so well. Copies are available at Kitab Khana, in other bookstores in different parts of the country. Yeah, so we are going to come out with the second run, the second print, In the second print, I'm going to announce to all of you, we will have a special section for translators too. Jadi Sahab is here, we have all kinds of people, and we will add little bio of them. So we are working continuously. So therefore, you can see this book, the book that we have today, Rivers, will continue its journey. This is not just one-shot anthology, I don't want to comment on, not in a professorial mode about anthology, history of anthology, or what, is called genealogy of anthology. But in a very simple poetic sense, the journey of Rivers will continue. It will continue in many ways, smaller little ways, like little rivulets, Maybe some of us, Bombay poets, one day we should go to the bank of Methi River, read some of the poems here. From this book, read them, so that maybe, Methi River again becomes Methi. So these words, I thank all of you for joining this fabulous reading for Rivers Going Home. And Vasu, I would like to, invite Jayant Parmar Sahab and Basudev Sunani. Basudev Sunani is in a very difficult place, Kala Handi. I don't know how many of us have been there. It's a place about Basudev knows so well, and he's a chronicler of a history, contemporary history, himself, our iconic poet, not just in Odia, but also in Indian poetry. And Jayantuda is known as, fabulous painter, and so I would like to invite a very unusual friend of Rivers Going Home, and I would like to ask him how he painted this. And this has become such a viral. Everyone who looks at the book says, "Oh my God, what a beautiful production! What a beautiful book!" So over to Vasu. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Ashwani sir. That was a wonderful introduction. The editor's vision behind the book, and it is really a product of solidarity, of friendship, of affection, and also of a difficult time period that the world has undergone during the pandemic. And since Jaideep sir is here, I would like to request Jaideep sir to formally welcome our guests,
Yeah.
because the Hearth Within works through him. It was his vision. The Hearth Within is also a pandemic product. It also emerged during the virtual networking of the pandemic to offer the solace of poetry for everyone. And so, Jaideep sir, now that you're here, over to you to welcome our guests and to introduce the book.
It's really wonderful evening. And, I start with Jivanananda Das as quoted by Ashwini. I murmur your name. Where are you at this moment? I wonder. We all wonder how rivers go home. Rivers Going Home is an interesting and intriguing title because, as many poets Ashwini has already referred to, lived by the rivers. By the rivers means not by landscape, maybe by landscape as well as by mindscape. Because when I talk of Jayant Mahapatra, it's a Mahanadi of hope, I say, because there are so many poems dedicated to River Daya or River Mahanadi, and Mahanadi of hope, because of you talk of in a very, in a sense, a very optimistic sense. And when we talk about a title of a poetry collection, and the first thing that impresses me is we are Indian, and we are Indian because we live in a country where the cultural mosaic is the key to reach our heart. And of course, that is our river, or all flowing rivers. It may be Krishna to Godavari, and Godavari to Ganges, and to Tapti to Brahmaputra. And the rivers constitute our motherland. And we all live close by the rivers, mentally or even physically, some of us. And home is always where our home is. And very interestingly, what I found in the book is that the book contains the translations. And whenever I talk about everything poetry, I say translation is possibly the heart of India. Because if one word I am to pick from India, for which demonstrates India very well, and India cannot be, described without the word translation, because of it's a cultural mosaic, it's a mosaic of languages, and the translations that within 71 poets, that gives a pan-Indian pain picture of the book. And when you talk about a book as an editor, it's a challenge if you are an Indian editor, and whom to include and whom not to include. Inclusion is always an exclusion. So, but as an editor, it's a challenge for many of us who have been engaged for many years and many decades on compilation, editing an anthology, editing a translation, a poetry collection translated from Indian languages. We rely on our cultural roots and also cultural sources. And very interesting, what I find in the book is that it begins with A.J. Thomas from Kerala and ends with Vinita, and Vinita Agarwal in Indore. And within the A.J. Thomas in Kerala to Vinita, it's a wonderful journey. And as in Meghdutam, the Megh describes India. And I was wondering how fortunate I am, being an Indian, to read the book where the country is so varied, so unique, and so beautifully set. Like the like the Meghdhatam, the cloud in Meghdhatam, the poetry, the poems in this particular collection are beautifully describing India. India from different gazes, India from different colors, and how beautifully they are placed. And 71 poets in solidarity. Who better than the poets can be friends of other poets? Poets can join hands together and build up a nation. I always consider poets as the nation builders. Nation builders. When we talk of Latin American, most of the poets of Indian stalwarts, when interviewing, I interviewed, and they said, Jaydeep, I am impressed. And I got many inspirations from the Latin American poets. So, so many Latin American great poets. But why Latin American connection that I am describing here? Because this uniqueness and this cultural mosaic, and also a kind of literature in English, which may not be a first language for many of us who are included in the book. That is the mastery of the confident Indian poets writing in English these days. Empire is writing back. The language we have chosen, English, but whether it is written in English or translated into English. And translation or written in English shows the confidence of our present time writers writing in English from India or from diasporic space. And in the book, if you look into the range of things covered, that is a spectrum, and it's like the Indian sari in many colors and many fabrics and like that. That is only possible by the Indian makers, and only Indian can write these poems. That is my specific zeal of confirmation, because you need a culture to deliver it. I need a cultural experience, linguistic experience to edit this book and to write these poems. And these poems are really global as well as home. They have one fit in their home, that is India, and also one fit, it matches with the international audience who are devoted to poetry. By devoted to poetry, I don't mean the casual readers of poetry. I mean readers who have really gone into the matters of poetry, who live with poetry, who die with poetry. I know, dying is the very final term in biological sense, but dying here is also, that is the first and the most important part of your life. If you go into the structural components, it's so varied, unique, and multidimensional. So in a way, Ashwani ji has done a kind of Himalayan work and putting them together, bringing it in front of us and say, here is a book, read India through me. And I'll say, we need more productions like this to look forward to a day where no one will question, you only can write novels, you only can write essays in your second language. Your poetry is the hallmark of your culture. Shakuntala in skirt and a lot of other derogatory remarks we had to listen to. But this is a very different generation. This is a very different time of Indian shining with Indian poetry in English. It's a very confident, it's the kind of confidence that we have, the strength we have, the mythological depth we have, many countries cannot produce. So I'd say always the time of the growth and development of Indian English poetry is almost complete. So we have more than 1 or 2 generations of English studies as a baggage. So we can experiment with our idioms, we can experiment with images, mythologies, and appropriating them into the cultural context and milieu that we are associated with immediately also in a national sense and transnational sense. Congratulations, Ashwini ji. You have hit wonderful production. We need more wonderful productions in the days to come. People say infection is a bad term, but I will say it should be infection. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jaideep sir. And I take away two metaphors from your discourse. So I take away the metaphor of, Meghdootam, the way you describe the book as the cloud messenger describes the landscape to the beloved. And of course, I cannot help but think of Abhay K here. Because I reread last his version of Meghdootam, and in monsoon, that is. And I take the metaphor of the sari, where you talk about, and it also reminds me of the book cover, where the river is actually flowing like a sari. So both these metaphors, I think, very appropriately map the range that the book covers, and also the cultural textures that it moves through. So thank you very much for bringing in these ideas. And with this, we actually move over to the poems, because we have wonderful poets here who will not only be reading their own poems, but also trying to throw some light on the book by reading poems that they admire from this collection. And I think I will begin with Jayant Parmar sir. So Jayant Parmar sir, I invite you to read your poem and any other poems of your choice from here. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. थैंक यू अश्विनी। और नज्म का उन्वान है नज्म कहाँ रखी है मैंने। मेज के खानों में, टेबल पर, रैक पे, अलमारी में और बुक शेल्फ पे कब से ढूंढ रहा हूँ। नई पुरानी किताबों के औरा के जुनून में, खद्दर के कुर्ते की फटी फटी जेबों में, ऊंट के चमड़े के बस्ते में नज्म कहाँ रखी है मैंने। पूछता हूँ फिर नेरुदा से, हेमिचाई से, रिल्के से, अभी अभी तो रखी थी। नज्म को ढूंढते ढूंढते ही मिल जाते हैं कलम, दवात और कोरे कागज, लेकिन नज्म बयाज दिल से गायब है। का अंग्रेजी, शुक्रिया।
बहुत खूब।
अंग्रेजी आप पढ़ेंगे या मैं पढ़ूंगा?
आप अगर अंग्रेजी आप पढ़ दें, अगर आप पढ़ें या मुझे कहें कौन सा, वेयर हैव आई केप्ट द पोएम।
The title of the poem, Where have I kept the poem? In the drawers of the desk, on the table, on the rack, in the cupboard, and on the bookshelf. Since long, I have been looking for it. In the passionate pages of books, new and old, in the torn, tattered pockets of the khaddar kurta, in the bag of camel leather. Where have I kept the poem? Then I ask Neruda, Hemichai, Rilke. Just a while ago, I had the poem. Now when I search for it, I find the pen, the inkpot, also some blank pages, but from the knots of my heart, the poem is missing.
Wow.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Very.
बहुत खूबसूरत।
Thank you.
और बहुत अच्छा, बहुत अच्छे से आपने पढ़ा। और ये कविता इतनी खूबसूरत है, स्पेशली इन हिंदी। ऑफ कोर्स इट साउंड्स लाइक पैराडाइज। वेरी वेरी ब्यूटीफुल। जैन सर, कुछ और पढ़ना चाहेंगे?
हाँ, मुझे
कोई
कुछ
और
बताया,
अगर जो
actually
आपकी
मुझे
किताब
बताया नहीं
इस
था
किताब
कि
में ना भी हो,
और
कोई
क्या
अपनी और
पढ़ना है।
कविता सुना दें।
हाँ, इसके बाद मैं सुनाऊँ, शायद मैं इसमें ढूंढ लूँ तब तक उसमें।
अच्छा, बिल्कुल, ठीक है। So we move over next to Basudev sir. Basudev sir, if you can hear us, We would love to, even if if you have a network problem, if your video doesn't work, you can just unmute and read your poems. Basudev sir, can you hear us? Maybe he isn't here.
Pretty much around. Basudev Bhai is around. He's pretty much there.
Yeah, he seems to have
Yeah.
unmuted. Yeah. Yes, sir. Over to you.
Yeah.
Oh, no. He got
Yeah.
disconnected. I believe he will come back. I believe he will come back. Then in the
Aage,
meantime,
he has
Anju
come
ma'am, we
back. He
could
has
have
come back.
your poem.
Aage,
Aage?
aage.
Oh, ji, bilkul. Basudev sir, over to you for your poem.
To Vasudha, Jaydeep, and Ashwani ji, and my elder brother Jayant ji. And really, it's a great job Professor Ashwani had done for all of us. It's a marvelous and appreciating job done by Professor Ashwani. So, the first poetry, the title is Play Acting.
We are unable to hear you, Basudev sir.
Don't take
Basudev sir, we are unable to hear you. Maybe, yeah, this is, now we can hear you.
I don't know.
The voice is not steady actually, either because of the network or if the device is not very close to you. Yeah, I think it's breaking. I think it's a network issue.
You have a very weak network. Is it comfortable? Are you able to hear
Yeah,
me?
now you are audible. Now these two sentences were perfectly audible. So if you could just continue maybe reading with your poem.
The title of the poem, just because I have at times catapulted a crow perched on a mango tree in the afternoon, don't consider me an ass archer. If I see a pitiful sight, I can't help crying. The bundle down to yourself. Keep the crown to yourself. I don't want to be king.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think the network is, distorting our experience. So just to complete this, I would like to read out the poem myself. So this is Play Acting by Basudev Sunani. Just because, along with my friends, I jumped into the river near my village. Don't take it for granted that I know swimming. Just because I have at times catapulted a crow perched on a mango tree in the afternoon, don't consider me an ace archer. If I see a pitiful sight, I can't help crying. If I see a sword or a knife, I wet my trousers. And you prod me to go to the pandal, wear the crown and be king. Keep the crown to yourself. I don't want to be king, even if it's in a play. I will not fight, even if it's a story that someone's family is being ruined. I cannot smile. And this has been translated from the original Odia by Rabindra Keswan. It's a wonderful piece of poem, and Basudev sir, we are so grateful that you did try to, read it out for us. You are here with us, though unfortunately, the network is distorting our experience. I hope you will be there with us, and maybe we can come around for a second reading, and maybe the network could be more supportive at that point of time. So from here, we move over to Anju Makhija. And Anju ma'am, over to you for your poems and other poems of your choice. You have to unmute. Anju ma'am, you have to unmute.
I was just saying that it's nice just to be together sometime, even though it just breaks. And I was just thinking, last time we read these poems was during the lockdown itself. And in the introduction, Ashwani has described that as a hallucinatory experience of lockdown and social isolation. And now we are years later, a few years later, maybe one or two, and we are reading the same poems, and in Ashwani's words, we are reflecting our individual and collective destiny. So I don't know where that river will flow. As he says, it keeps on flowing. So we've already moved in a way that is almost surrealistic. It was there, it ended, and now we are looking forward. So it also gives hope in the human mind and race and the optimism. So that's nice. Thank you for that, Ashwani. He's not there, but nevertheless. So I'll start off by reading, well, there are two poems, and I'll start with the one which is called, Can You Answer, Professor? It's in the form of a question and answer in a way, and it's also a bit surrealistic, so bear with me if it's not too clear immediately. Can you answer, Professor? When were you born? When were you born? Forbes dry gin, rum-flavored pipe tobacco, sunflower seeds, Mozart's Amadeus, Milton's Paradise Lost, the right mix for immortality. A flap and the fly is dead. When will you die? When will you die? Refilling the glass, lighting the pipe, peeling the seeds, lulled by the music, flipping through Paradise Regained, meditating on the bend of a leaf, a flap, and the fly is dead. You do not know. You do not know. Empty glass, pipe dangling, seed skin scattered, chanting a mantra, reading Path to Nowhere, panning the guru, a flap, and the fly is dead. What do you know then? What do you know then? Gin twice a week, pipe alternate days, 12 seeds at lunch, weekly concert, writing the great gibberish novel, the right mix for immortality, a flap, and the fly is dead. Well, it's some time since I read that. And the second one, there were just two there. During those dark times, I remember Don Morris. I'm sure the poets here all know him sometimes or know of him for sure. And this was written one evening after we had met at Indigo. It's a place quite popular in Bombay. So it's called Black and White for Don Morris. Life gets darker as we grow older. We had shared a cigarette at Indigo. His crop of white hair made him look boyish. White was not the color of aging. For Dom, it was a color alive. He had climbed the stairs, ladies on either side, ordered oysters, tied the napkin at the neck tight, and digested literary issues. Late night, he staggered down the steps. We held on as if to precious china. That night I prayed, keep a special place for him, God. Keep a special place for him, God, as you surely do for all great poets. His number is still in my mobile. To delete it would be to concede. Dom's pen no longer slides across the page. He had once advised me, your poetic voice is adventurous. The chiseling will come with patience and age. My dark hair peppers with white. White becomes the color of aging. As I witness death at close quarters, the darkness he described comes to life. I resort to Kundera, Krishna, sometimes even to a bowl of oysters, wine, and Dom's verse. Occasionally, I attempt to write a poem that will die on the page, never giving birth to another. Thank you.
Thank you, Anju ma'am, for your very, very beautiful poems and your beautiful reading. And from Anju Makhija, we go over to Menka Shivdasani. So Menka ma'am, over to you.
अच्छा अंजू मखीजा साहब को सलाम तो कर लूं, मैं उनका बॉन्की बॉन्की हूँ. जरा सलाम मैडम, सलाम.
नमस्कार.
सलाम जी जी. सलाम. नदी बहती है समुद्र में, अंजू मखीजा के सामने समुद्र खुद ब खुद बह के आ जाता है. थैंक यू.
पौंडीचेरी में आप लोग ने बड़ी बड़ी ड्रामेटिक रीडिंग करी हैं.
Now you're my fish also. Now you're also.
मैं समुद्र की मछली बना दी मुझे इन्होंने. समुद्र की मछली बना के बेच भी दिया किसी मछुआरे के हाथ. वो लेके चला गया मुझे. सब अल्लाह की दुआ है. सब अल्लाह की. थैंक यू अंजू.
Thank you. Unmute.
Menka ma'am, you have to unmute, and I'll also make a prior request that you have another river poem, which is not in this book, but which probably came later. And I would also love to have you read that poem after you have read, poems from this anthology.
Sure, thank you.
Over to you.
So should I read other people's poems as we first discussed?
Maybe you could read one of yours and a couple of other poems.
Okay, so then let me begin with Shikhandin's poem. It's called Sudden Lull. And it really resonated with me, so I'd like to read it. Sudden lull. A stream of silence comes meandering by, and finding little obstruction, gathers into a pool. An occasional bird call plops like a pebble, spreading small ripples of unrest, but before long is swallowed whole. Now that unblinking pool of silence lies quiet at my feet, and quiet sits this evening underneath the eaves, and I can almost feel heaven in this moment where eternity breathes. I thought that was a beautiful poem that we experienced it during lockdown. I'll now move on to one of the two poems that Ashwani has published in this book, which I had read, one of my poems. This is based on a folk tale, a Sindhi folk tale, that has to do with two lovers who were both connected and destroyed by a river that was between them. And Sweeney used to swim across this river to her lover every night using a clay pot for support. And one day her sister-in-law, who did not appreciate these encounters, her sister-in-law replaced that pot with one of unbaked clay. And of course, that resulted in tragedy, and this was my poem. Sweeney Adrift. What is this river that takes me along with a leaking pot against the setting sun? Shadows fall like lattice gates upon the face, and a song streams softly in the dark, whispers in the wind. I have crossed these waters many times before, but tonight the fireflies, like false hopes in the sky, turn dusk to darkness with every flash, and my lover seems so far away on the other side. Tonight the clay that these cold fingers cradle falls apart as though fire had never touched it. I, Sweeney, born in desert lands, I know the touch of sun and earth as it crumbles in my hand. The water, black as death, is seeping through. This broken pot bites my burning skin as crocodiles circle in the stream. Meher, I feel you like a folk tale in my bones. But where are you in these whirling waves as my world disintegrates? So,
Wow, wow, beautiful.
my
Beautiful,
computer just
beautiful,
fell
beautiful.
on the screen. So I'm not going to read the other poem that Ashwini published, because I think let's keep some poems for the people who buy the books. So they
Yeah,
perish
that's a
something.
good idea.
Yeah.
That's a good idea, Menka. Don't read everything.
But Basudhara, thank you for asking me to read the reverse poem that I wrote after much later after this reading that we had done. Someone has raised a hand. I don't know what that's about. So this is my poem just called Rivers. The rivers do not speak. They have been silenced today, burying their secrets as bodies burn their banks. The rivers have nothing to say. These waters are soundless, but they fret and foam, swollen with bodies like boats colliding in the creeks with oars of broken bones. Silt blackened on the shoreline, ash on the tongue, eyes melting in the sand, arms turning into wood. These bodies will go unsung. In time, their voices will return, rippling through the air, rattling in the wind, echoes in the ether, here and not yet there. And the river will respond in gasps and fits and starts, coughing on the graves that lie below. Boulders break where no one sees. These waters shiver in the dark. Tonight, the dogs are happy. The vultures hover, peck, and bite. Such riches for them to feast on, each morsel a delight. Come quick, they tell each other. There are more bodies on the way. And the rivers, they have nothing to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Menka ma'am,
Yes,
for this beautiful poem. Thank you. I'm sure it would have been in the anthology had this been written before. Sanjeev sir is here, and he is, he's in transit, and we are very glad that he could make it to this particular reading. Sanjeev sir, over to you so that you can read for us, before something else takes you away. Over to you. You have to unmute. Sanjeev sir, you have to unmute.
Sanjeev, unmute.
We cannot hear you.
Sanjeev,
You are
unmute.
muted.
Sanjeev, unmute.
There would be a red
Send him a
button.
message.
Yeah, now I'm
Yeah,
Message.
yeah, perfect.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Please.
Yes, yes, Sachin.
Uh, yeah. So I read. I'm actually standing on a highway, uh, going to Goa to
Sunat.
attend this uh, poetry festival. Uh, so I'm going to read a part of, I think, one or two sections of my poem Mutatis Mutandis, Ashwini.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I have already mentioned to everyone that Harish Trivedi loved your Mutandis Mutandis, So please, read
Thank you.
sections, two sections at least,
Thank you.
if you can manage.
Yeah.
If you can manage.
Yeah. 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 So this is Mutatis Mutandis. Mutatis Mutandis means a change. Uh, Marx call it necessary change. This is basically a legal term, but from sociologists to political science students have used it number of times
Yeah.
for different things, basically to denote the change. I'm reading now. The doctor should have realized it before my wife did. At least the nurse should have. I met the nurse. Sister, it is serious, I asked. She said, ask the doctor, don't hold me responsible. Of course, I don't hold you responsible, I said. All I want to ask is, did you notice anything? The nurse replied, the doctor seems to be really hassled. So many patients, so many emergencies. Number 14 is still in labor, you see. Even now, I asked. Mind your own business, she said, and stormed away. If you need the Gita, the Quran, the Bible, etc., you will get it at the help desk. She offered on her way out. God bless you, she murmured under the breath. Doctor, I shouted out. The doctor looked up, nodded. So you have noticed it? I asked. He nodded again and said, it is quite normal. Don't worry. Don't worry. Normal? I asked with disbelief. Normal as in, it sometimes happens this way, he replied. In a jar on his table was a fetus flowing in a murky liquid. Two fetuses, probably with bellies stuck each to each. The doctor saw me staring at the jar. This is a mutant, he informed. And what is a mutant? I asked. Monsters in the jar, answered the doctor. I looked away. Like flies that buzz and sit on the same spot, my eyes hovered around the jar. Two. When I meant to say was, begins the doctor. And what did you mean to say? I asked. This happens sometimes because of the delivery stress, and to make it worse, your wife is the emotional type. I don't understand, I replied. So don't worry, she will be fine tomorrow. She had a normal delivery. Yes, there were some painful cramps, but your baby is healthy and normal, he added. I heaved a sigh and gulped dryly. Exactly. I did not feel there was anything abnormal, I said. The doctor said, go home now. And yes, this is the bills. Sleep well, you are in safe hands. God bless you. I fished oh, out a wad of notes from my wallet. The doctor handed me a receipt. I entered the ward again. Passing several pregnant women, I reached my wife's room. Can this child be ours? My wife asked me yet again. Whose else can it be? I asked. I have never had sex with anyone else, she insisted. Yes, of course, I reassured her. Then how come? Asked my wife. I said, everything is fine, everything is normal. She burst out, what is normal? And said, look, he has green hair. Do you have green hair? I replied, no, but God bless him. She said, do I have green hair? I said, no, but they may well turn green someday. She said, look, he has stripes all over his body like a tiger. Do you have stripes on your body? I said, no, but I can paint them. She said, I'm serious. Do I have stripes on my body then? I said, no, none that I have seen. Then how does he have them? I replied, shut your eyes. Don't take too much stress. Get some sleep. You know, we sometimes become victims of our own hallucinations. Let's deal with this tomorrow, shall we? She shut her eyes. I began patting her back. The baby began sucking at her breast. It looked lovely. God bless you, I said. Catch some sleep. I said, here the second finishes. Do you want me to read third also?
Please,
Hello?
if you can make it, please.
Okay. I'll read third also. Oh, on the third day, my wife said, it growls off and on. Whose belly growls? I asked. Nobody's belly growls. Our child growls, she said. Don't be silly, I said reassuringly. My wife said, call the doctor right now. The doctor came. Please examine him, she said. The doctor placed his hand on my wife's breast. Are you lactating? Good, very good. Don't worry, he said. The doctor looked at me and said, please leave. What are you doing in a maternity ward anyway? He asked. My wife said, not me, doctor. Examine the baby. The doctor drew a blank. Look at this green hair, his stripes on the body. She sighed. We will say we found him in a jungle. I tried to be funny. Yes, 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 the jungle boy, said a male intern softly. We could call him Mowgli, suggested a female intern. God is great. All will be well, said the nurse. God bless you, said the doctor, and pressed his stethoscope against the baby's chest. My wife shut her eyes, her tense eyebrows arched. He will fall asleep now, insisted the nurse. Everybody started filing out. I came out too. The interns clamored around the doctor, who tried valiantly to explain. He suggested we should get a proper checkup done. I said, but what did you do now? The doctor said, what did I do? He looked at me and said, we should check you up. Sister, prepare him, he ordered. Let's eliminate the need for artificial insemination. The interns crowded around me. The nurse said, take your clothes off and stand there. I took my clothes off. The interns began closing in. The nurse drained the bottle in a glass and said, drink. I drank it. She kept 4 multicolored, 2 white, and 6 black pills on my palm and said, swallow them. I swallowed them. The interns promised to be back from their round soon. I said, take your time. The nurse said, continue standing, and told the ward boy, keep an eye on him. I stood naked, with the ward boy standing guard. What's your problem? He asked, and continued standing guard, staring at my nakedness. I will take some time. It will take some time. Ejaculate in this test tube, the nurse interjected. The ward boy smirked, said I was normal. I stood clutching my penis and the test tube and waited. Within minutes, the doctor came in with his interns. Yes, he said. Yes, she said, and gave the test tube a gratified look. He said, no problem. He's all yours now. Examine him. The interns began their job. Open your mouth, show your tongue, inhale, exhale, pump on your stomach, draw on your chest, move your eyes, move them all around. I moved them. Move your hands, move your legs. Stroke your penis. I stroked it. X-ray him, they said. I got myself X-rayed. Standing, sitting, sleeping, spit here, pee here, shit here, deposit your semen here. Did all this. Vomit blood, I vomited it. All the interns shouted in unison, now say Amen. I said Amen. Touch the child and say Amen. I said Amen, Amen, Amen. Everything is normal, said the doctor, and placed another bill in my hand. I drew a blank but felt good. What about my wife? What about my baby? I asked. The condition is curable, the doctor said. Psychogenetic, neuromuscular, psychosomatic, matured. For 3 days and 3 nights, my wife continued to sleep, probably suckled the baby in between dreams. The baby looked fine. My wife woke up with the fright and asked me with desperation, how do I face the world? I have never had sex with anyone else. It's okay, it's okay. I patted her. Here the third portion finishes. There are 13 portions, so I stop here.
Thank you, thank you. The way you so dramatically read it, it was wonderful.
Could you tell us something about how you thought of this poem? What are you interrogating in this poem?
Yes, because
tell
Smita
us
ma'am
What
had
happened?
planned to read this out initially. When we sent an invitation, Smita ma'am said that she'll be reading this poem out. And then when you were there on the panel, she said that, okay, if the poet himself is there, I won't be reading this. So she also loves the poem very
Oh,
much.
No, because he reads
basically,
it
the
so
two
well.
things.
Yeah, yeah.
I wrote this poem in 2004, sometime almost 20 years back. And as you know, around that time, the world was changing. I mean, all around the world, everything was changing. The whole idea of genetic science on one side, information technology, Gmail had just arrived, Facebook had yet not arrived, but similar kind of things were happening. Variety of things were happening, and what was happening was youth was changing. A lot of changes were happening in music, in arts, in the way we talk to each other. The SMS had just started. WhatsApp was not there, but SMS has started. The phones, smartphones were not there, but phone had a camera that time. So variety of such things were changing. So this change was there, and with this change, a lot of social, political activities and things and communications were changing also. However, most of the times, what happens is when the change is there, we try to push it down. We say, no, no, there is no change, nothing at all. And actually, the change happens and change continues. And especially there is, I mean, the entire medical science believes that you have to look at the mutant first to understand the normal. So whenever something different, something out of the way, something abnormal happens, one has to look at it. Aristotle said it long time back, 2000 years back almost. So that's the thing. So I thought there is a change, but nobody is believing that there is a change. People are still saying, the way our prime minister also used to say, that there is no climate crisis. This happens because most of the old people, they think that something is changed and something is changed, but actually climate crisis was happening. But so this is how it happens. So I was trying to talk about change, and so this here, the baby is a new thing. It's a completely baby represents the new generation, the XZ generation, whatever you call it, and it is a completely new thing. But and that has been noticed by many people that this is change, but people still are putting some kind of sheet on it and saying, "Oh, there is no change, nothing. Everything is normal. Everything is fine. Everything is etc. etc." So this is the basic germ of this poem. Of course, it develops into variety of things. This goes on 13. This thing it can be performed also. Some people have tried to put it in a theatrical form also. So even after 20 years, it is still alive. So I'm very happy with it. Thank you very much.
And I think because of what was happening in the medical industry due to the COVID, this has
Yeah,
gained
yeah,
added echoes, with the doctor thrusting bills into the hands of the
absolutely,
patient. So it has gained an added impetus
absolutely.
and an added subtext because of whatever has been
Yeah,
happening.
absolutely,
Thank you very much for
absolutely right.
sharing that wonderful poem with us in that wonderfully dramatic voice. Thank you. Thank you so much, especially for joining us from
Thank you.
transit. Thank you.
Thank
And a
you
very
very much. Thank you very
hilarious
much.
and very
Thank you,
hilarious
Ashwini.
poem as well.
Ashwini, special thanks to you.
Thank you, thank you, Dada. And it's a Marathi, and I've listened to him several times, and I consider this is an iconic, Indian poem, and most experimental, most compelling poem. And I'm happy that it has been brought into English. I want to see the entire poem. Sanjeev never writes small poem. He can never write haiku. That's the temperament of Sanjeev. Thank you, Sanjeev.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It
Bye
was an
bye. All
excellent
the best.
reading. Thank you for sharing with us.
And from Sanjeev Sridhar, we move over to Smita Agarwal. So, Smita ma'am, over to you for your poems. You have muted yourself.
Thank you very much, Ashwini, Red River, Indian Novels Collective, all the poets who are, featuring here in this beautiful anthology. Thank you so much, Jayant Parmar ji, for the lovely cover design.
Thank you. Thank you.
So after all the thanks, what I would like to say is just cast a glance at the title of the book. And it reminds me, Rivers Going Home, somehow, the moment I read it, it reminded me of the Sanskrit Katha Sarita Sagar. And a poem is also a katha. It may not be a pages long katha or an hours long katha, but a poem is also a katha. And somehow, Rivers Going Home reminds me of Katha Sarita Sagar. So that resonance occurs in my heart, and it makes me closer. As Jaideep had said, the cultural the cultural and the linguistic textures that this anthology contains is going to make it go a long way. And as Ashwini said, if there are going to be additions and if more translations are going to be added, then I'm sure during the course of years, it may become one of the seminal texts that lovers of poetry and students of poetry will dive into and, read carefully when they try to sort of get an idea of the entire range and the map of Indian poetry. So having said that, then I'll come to the reading. No, and I also want to I want to publicly on this platform thank Ashwini for this very serendipitous as well as this very, very imaginative idea that he got during the lockdown. And when he called me and he said this was happening, as Menka has said, I was terrified. I just didn't know how to handle it because the universities were, were not functioning. So, later on, the universities, the younger colleagues coached us on how to handle all this digital technology and this digital world. But at that time, they said in March or in April 2020, this had not happened. So I was terrified and I almost refused. And then after that, when I said yes, there was a flurry of activity because I didn't have this background or anything in my life. So I actually sat in my drawing room, took a table there, put my laptop on it, sat in my drawing room and put flower vases here and there beside my head to make myself appear presentable to the public. So I have to thank Ashwini from the bottom of my heart for developing my digital persona and for making me digitally
Menka will be very happy to hear
digitally
that.
literate. Otherwise, of course, I was a complete buffoon in these things.
And today we've reached a point where someone can stand on the road and the highway and read a poem.
That's great.
And he did it so well, I must say, traveling to Goa in his car and getting all those expressions. Brilliant. I mean, I'm really quite impressed by
Menka is the source of inspiration. And I very thank Shikhandin, because she brought Shikhandin also. I mean, like, see the inclusiveness nature of Menka Shivdasani. Thank you, Menka.
Shrini,
Stay like this.
the ultimate inclusiveness, the fact that you got us all together.
Yes.
Together.
And yes, I must say this about Menka Ashwini, now that we are discussing it, that she's always, she doesn't, she thinks of Indian poetry in English at a macro level. She's never just thinking about her poetry and her writing and her reading. She is always encouraging other writers to be involved in the entire gamut of poetry writing and publishing. So if you're not involved in all the activities, for example, the reviewing is essential, the readings are essential, poets turning up at other poets' readings and commenting on their work, learning from their work. All this goes into building up this tradition of Indian writing in English, and especially this Indian poetry in English, which is, after all, just 200 years old.
Yep.
So if we
Yes,
don't,
absolutely.
we don't involve ourselves in all the components of poetry writing and publishing, we are not going to be able to take this tradition forward. And Menka always encourages us to be involved in these things.
Thank you,
So,
Smita. There's a very selfish reason I get to hear great poetry.
Whatever it is carrying the river forward towards home. So having said all that, the first poem that I would like to read is, of course, the book is dedicated to Mangalesh Dabral ji, whom I admire as a poet writing in Hindi. So, and it is very unfortunate. Most of us got corona by the end of it. but Mangalesh Davralji and even I myself were perhaps the people who got it in the first phase itself, when the roadmap was the medical roadmap was very indistinct. The doctors themselves, especially in small towns of Uttar Pradesh like Allahabad, the doctors themselves didn't know what was happening, and there was total chaos. And I don't know, by some stroke of luck or some grace of God, I am here before you today. But Manglesh ji, I'm afraid, succumbed. And since the book is dedicated to him, I would like to begin my reading by reading his poem, This Number Does Not Exist. This has been very beautifully translated from the Hindi by Sudeep Sen, our friend Sudeep Sen. And the poem is actually a lament, but it's not a strident lament. It's a very soft spoken lament. And this lament anguishes over the passing on of a way of life. And that is why it is close to my heart. So, here for all of you, This Number Does Not Exist by Mangalesh Dabral. This number does not exist. Wherever I go, whichever number I dial, at the other end, a strange voice says, This number does not exist. ये number मौजूद नहीं है. Not too long ago, at this number, I used to reach people who said, Of course we recognize you. There is space for you in this universe. But now, this number does not exist. It is some old number. At these old addresses, very few people are left where, at the sound of footsteps, doors would be opened. Now, one has to ring the bell and wait in apprehension. And finally, when one appears, it is possible that he might have changed, or that he might say, I am not the one you used to talk to. This is not the number where you would hear out your grief. Wherever I go, numbers, maps, faces seem to be changed. Old diaries are strewn in the gutters, their names slow, fading in the water. Now, other numbers are available more than ever, with and without wires, but a different kind of conversation on them. Only business, only transactions, buy and sell, voices like strangers. Wherever I go, I desperately dial a number and ask for the voice that used to say, The door is open. You can stay here. Come along for a while, just for the sake of it, anytime in this universe. Thank you.
Lovely.
Oh, nice.
An aside that I would like to add, these days it seems to be the fashion to not have punctuation in your poetry. Now, that's fine. That is the poet's individual choice. They can organize their line breaks in such a way that punctuation may not be needed. But why don't those poets also cogitate on this, that somebody else is also going to be reading the text of the page? So, like this poem, there are very few punctuations here in this translation. And if a second person or a third party is reading the poem, then you know, it creates difficulty in getting the expression that the poet himself would have managed had they been reading the poem. So I don't know, this is something that we as writers can look into and, you know, give a lot of thought. This fashion of not having punctuation, that's fine by the writer, because the writer knows how to read his or her or their own work. But what about the other person who is going to read? Perhaps the punctuation is going to benefit them delivering the poem to an audience. This is just something we can think about. Then the next poem that I'm going to read is my poem included in the anthology chosen by Ashwani. And this poem is called Lockdown. It's a different kind of lockdown that I'm talking of in this poem. And I'm not going to, expand on that. I'll first read the poem and then give you the backstory of the poem. So, Lockdown. Each night he watched his father stagger in late, drunk, swear at his mother, stoking up a rage. Then came the beating, flinging the steel plate, the small bowls of dal and sabzi clanging and clattering on the cement floor, dragged by her hair, the woman wailing, he covering in the corner, fingers clenching into fists, his body curling into a ball, his palms covering his ears, his sobs choking. Now he gazes into space, seldom uttering a sound. Since the day her head was hit against the wall, the thud, the crack, her ever so slow slump to the ground, he shut himself in, he shut himself out, hunkering into a lockdown. So it's just a different interpretation of the lockdown. It was written during the lockdown. And the backstory of the poem is that some readers said that this is appropriation. Ma'am, what do you know? You're just, this is just appropriation. So in order to contest that, I need to tell you the story that this is not appropriation, it is testimony. When I was the director of the Center of Women's Studies a few years back, we had a symposium on child sexual abuse. And we got counselors and experts from this group called Rahi of Delhi that is, conducts workshops and all on child sexual abuse. The counselors are very well trained and they are very good. And of course, the participants of the symposium were university students, 19 to say 22, 25 years old, university students, BA, MA, PhD. And these counselors were so good that in one of the workshops, the symposium went on for 2 days, and there were lots of workshops in it. So in one of the workshops, the counselor was able to make some people open up. And there was this student of political science, he must have been 21 or 22 years old, and he recounted his own personal testimony to us. Our hair stood on end. The boy was able to, defreeze something which he had locked into himself. He was able to defreeze or defrost that trauma. So the backstory of the poem is this, that it is not, something that I just read of in a novel or in a newspaper, but it is actual testimony that I was witness to. And we were all so moved. And many, many months later, I got this poem. This poem is that boy's story. So the next poem from the book that I will read for you is a typical poem. In my entire oeuvre, there are many love poems. Because as I said, I am Smita Dil Phek. And at the drop of a hat, I can, just give away my heart to any and everyone. So this is and then when you go through so many experiences, then you also interrogate what is love, because not always is love a pleasant experience. Mostly it is a roller coaster ride where a myriad of emotions are churning inside you. And so this is this poem, Love, takes a look at that. Love. What can one do with love? It knows no boundaries, blows like air, is everywhere. Shapeshifter like the amoeba, amorphous, atavistic, rudimentary, created by God, nature, or mind of man. Clear water, chilled in a crystal glass offered to the one out in the peak of summer under the subcontinental sun, or desert without shade or hope where one must bake and burn. Sin or boon, insult or admiration, kiss or slap, balm or caustic, what can one do with love other than ruminate? This love should never have come. This love shall never be complete. Let's just murmur under our breath, bite our lips or gnash our teeth, be grateful for having had the chance to say, we love. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Smita ma'am. And
Thank
your lockdown poem was certainly also, I think that it brought in the, the subtext of the increasing cases of domestic violence that took place during the lockdown. So even, I think post-COVID and post-lockdown, nobody will say that this is not testimony. It was very much, very much pertinent to whatever we have undergone in these last couple of years. And of course, your love poems are brilliant as always. And thank you for concluding with a love poem. And if greed is anything to go by, both of us are wearing green this evening. So I thoroughly accept your, idea that one can fall in love at any time, and it's a roller coaster ride, which your poems amply illustrate. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for concluding with that. And I'm really admiring Suhit's patience. It is so very difficult to be the last speaker at a gathering. When I am placed by my surname, I often appear at the end like this because I begin, it comes with Roy. And Suhit, I really admire your patience for having waited so sweetly all this while. And over to you for your wonderful poems.
Thank you, Basudharaji, and to all of you here. It's been really amazing to listen to all of you, and I'd really like to thank Ashwani ji for the gracious and patient attempt at the gracious and patient initiative in bringing out this absolutely magnificent anthology. It's as a collection and as an object, one just really falls in love with it. Thank you so much, Ashwani ji, for again showing that in a sense, Indian poets writing in English, we are scattered all across the country, but there is a certain collegial, a certain community feeling. So I'd like to read, and again, it's such a huge, pleasant experience to listen to all of you speak. And read out. So I've chosen poems by. So I've chosen poems by two poets. Sarabjeet Garcha and Medha Singh, two short poems.
Wonderful. I wanted to listen to them.
So Sarabjeet Garcha,
एक अपनी भी सुनाइएगा समंदर वाली, एक अपनी भी सुनाइए.
जी सर. Thank you, sir. So Sarabjeet's poem, in which he, it's called Unending, Sarabjeet Garcha. It's hard to know how tiny that room must have been, the room in which only one man could lie down. On a night, the town was dangerously close to being drowned in rain. It isn't hard to know what a knock on the door meant. The door opened, and soon there was only enough room for two to sit, the rain writing its unending story outside. Another knock, and there were three standing shoulder to shoulder, faces to the wall, facing the street. The story doesn't say anything about a window allowing light in, or a bulb hanging from the roof, or a kerosene lamp fashioned from an ink bottle with a wick thrust through a hole in the top. The story also doesn't say anything about a third knock announcing the arrival of a fourth man. Had there been another seeker, we know what would have happened. The first one to open the door would have stepped outside, letting the other two sleep while standing, letting the latest guest cross the threshold and enter the new room that the other two had just built with eyes shut. A room so wide that the whole town slept under its roof, the rain writing its unending story outside. It's just gorgeous. I've read it and reread it, and every time, it just sort of reveals one more aspect of its fragrance. The second poem I'd like to read is by Medha Singh. A very short poem about, I think, Delhi. It's called Delhi. Yes, Menka ji, I totally, it is quite something, Sarabjeet's poem, yeah. I'm glad you liked it too. So Delhi, Day Design by Medha Singh. Traveling by moonlight into morning, I cast a smokeless fog over winter. Still down the body of this map, there the fishermen have begun throwing their nets that clutch the slow and bulbous sea. Easy winter light between the nodes, still as it guards the stones therein, that build by 1,000 touches a city, her mausoleums, now the clouds clearing up into a blue as heaven's dome. Wow.
Wow, lovely.
Just 10 short lines, but it just possible to think of Lodhi's mausoleum. So I'll just finish with a very short poem, my own this time. This is called The Ant Queen. The Ant Queen. With her own jaws, she chewed off her wings. This is actually a scientific fact, apparently. For protein, the ant queen in the burrow feeds on her wings. With her own jaws, she chewed off her wings. They nourished her till her first eggs were laid. Now, as the pulsing heart of pullulation, she fills chamber after chamber with generations emanating like concentric ripples from the bindu of her body. The urge to multiply is heady and fulfilling, and her destiny, or at least seems to be. Sometimes she feels a fluttering at her back, having sold the sky for the colony's sake. If she still dreams of lost flight, what of it? Thank you. That was my
Oh,
point.
lovely. Thank you. Fantastic.
Beautiful, Suhit. Thank you for reading your poem as well as for bringing Sarabjeet and Medha into this beautiful, warm gathering for the evening. And I think with Suhit reading, we have come to an end, unless Jayant would grace us with another.
Basudev Sunani Saab's poem, if you can.
Yeah, I would read that after a poem that Jayant sir has read.
Yeah.
Jayant sir, कोई भी एक कविता आप अपनी सुनाइए और फिर हम
Yeah. इसी में से
किसी में से सुनाए ना जयंत भाई, कोई नई नज्म भी सुना दे ना, कोई एक नई
नहीं,
एक नदी बनाइए ना, यू मेक रिवर एवरी डे, एक नई नदी बना के दें आप जी। हम समुंदर के पास रहते हैं ना, गिव अस अ न्यू रिवर।
The title of the poem, Paper. In bygone times, they wrote on the leaves, on the bhojpatra, on the palm leaves, on the chest of trees, on the rocks, on the animal skins, on the copper. Our Vedas too were written on bhojpatra. But they wrote black recharge of terror on my body, even today. Thank you.
बहुत good, बहुत. But just a second, Vasu. I have
Yes.
just received two lovely, books from Jayant Bhai in Urdu. In Urdu, Sohit, I have received this. I mean, like, Jayant Bhai, you
Thank you,
expand
thank you,
our
yeah.
horizon. Jayant
Yeah,
Bhai, you
yeah.
expand our horizon. You bring Hindustani, make us Hindustani once again. आपसे गुजारिश है कि एक छोटी
जी, जी.
सी नज्म या शेर उर्दू में सुनाए हमें. उर्दू एक मोहब्बत की जुबान है जो धीरे धीरे देश में गायब हो रही है. प्लीज, बिफोर इट वैनिशेस, disappears. जयंत भाई, आपकी किताब और आपकी स्मृतियों के साथ प्लीज एक छोटी सी चीज उर्दू में सुनाएं. जयंत भाई.
पीली उदासी की एक नज्म, अमृता शेरगिल को.
जी.
अमृता, तुम सीजान की ही मानिंद रंगों को पाने की तरह गर्चे पतला करती नहीं. उधार लेती हो गोगे की तस्वीरों से पीली उदासी. उधार लेती हो गोगे की तस्वीरों से पीली उदासी. रसूलन बाई के गायन सी. कत्थई धरती पर अक्सर उदास चेहरे, गुमसुम आंखें, भटकती रूहें वर के दिल गीला करती हैं. कैनवस पर रंगों के हिज्जे चेहरों में तब्दील होते हैं. अभी अभी तो शुरू हुआ था मुकालमा रंग और ब्रश का, और अचानक खत्म हुआ. कैनवस पर अब फैल रही है पीली उदासी की एक नज्म.
क्या बात है, क्या बात. बहुत ओवर टू वासु.
मैं वैन गोग पे सुनाना चाहूंगा एक
अच्छा,
नज्म जो है.
सुनाइए
उसकी जो स्टाइल है, पेंटिंग की स्टाइल जो है,
जी,
उसी पर नज्म है.
जी.
और ये किताब है. एक्चुअली पेंटिंग जो बनाता था वैन गोग, उसकी पूरी जो स्टाइल है उसके अंदर मैंने ये रिफ्लेक्ट किया है. विंसेंट वैन गोग. रंगों ने कब कैद किया है तुमको, परछाई को नीला रंग लगा के तारे आसमान को रेजा रेजा कर देते हो. सब्ज घास को पीली इबारत में लिखते हो, पेड़ में आग लगा रखते हो. प्यालों और बोतल में सिर्फ हवा अपने चेहरे की मानिंद. ब्रश के स्ट्रोक में सारा गुस्सा थूक रहे हो. कैनवस पर कलर ट्यूब खाली करते देखा है मैंने. कैनवस पर कलर ट्यूब खाली करते देखा है मैंने. छुरी पे चिपके रंग में खुद ही उतर जाते हो. जुनू किनारे बैठ के क्या क्या ख्वाब सजाते हो, लेकिन सुबह से पहले ओस की तह में दब जाते हो.
क्या बात है, क्या बात. बहुत शुक्रिया आपका. बहुत शुक्रिया. बहुत शुक्रिया.
बहुत शुक्रिया sir, बहुत शुक्रिया. Thank you very much for concluding with such a beautiful painting like poem. And I think that brings us to a wonderful conclusion for this entire session, for this
एक
book.
गुजारिश है वासु, एक गुजारिश है
जी
हमारे
सर,
तरफ
जी.
से. आपने I want to say something.
Yeah.
And please, if Jaydeep is around, I would like him to hear.
No, Jaydeep sir had to leave actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to thank everyone and the way you conducted. But before we conclude this, let me read a short poem from Mangalesh and for Mangalesh. इजाजत है If
Perfect.
everyone is
Bilkul,
around.
bilkul. That is how it should conclude. Yes, I would
Yeah,
have
yeah.
anyways come over to you for the conclusion.
Yeah.
Please,
So
yes.
what I would like to do, as I mentioned repeatedly, and all over I talk about Mangalesh in terms of solidarity and his memory. I'm going to read a poem he wrote beautifully, very close to his heart. It's called Rag Marwa. Rag Marwa is a very melodious rag. In this rag, Rishabh and Dhavats are considered Wadi and Sambadi. The rag is mostly rendered in Madhyam Saptak. And this rag, if you look at and remember, this instigates the feeling of renunciation from the pains and pleasures of the material world. So therefore, I would like to share with all of you, and Smita Agarwal is a very well-known singer too. I'm sure that all of us will enjoy this rag and remember, how rivers are a tribute to the memory of Mangalesh and also the poetry at large. So here is Rag Marwa, Mangalesh Dabral. And Mangalesh wrote this poem after listening to Amir Khan and Pannalal Ghosh. I read this. बहुत दूर किसी जीवन से निकल कर आती है, बहुत दूर किसी जीवन से निकल कर आती है राग मारवा की आवाज. उसे आमिर खान गाते हैं अपने अकेलेपन में, या पन्ना लाल घोष बजाते हैं किसी चरवाहे किसी अपनी लंबी पुरानी बांसुरी पर. वह तुम्हारे आसपास एक एक चीज को छूता हुआ बढ़ता है, उसके भीतर जाता है, उसी का रूप ले लेता है. देर तक उठता एक आलाप धीरे धीरे एक आलाप बन जाता है. एक भाषा अपने शब्द खोजने के लिए फड़फड़ाती है. एक बांसुरी के छेद गिरते पिघलते बहते जाते हैं. उसमें मिठास है या अवसाद, ये इस पर निर्भर करता है कि सुनते हुए तुम उसमें क्या खोजते हो. मारवा संधि प्रकाश का राग है. वो जब दिन जाता हुआ होता है और रात आती हुई होती है, जब दोनों मिलते हैं कुछ देर के लिए, वह अंत और आरंभ के बीच का धुंधलका है. जन्म और मृत्यु के मिलने की जगह, प्रकाश और अंधकार के गडमड चेहरे, देर तक कांपता एक विकल हाथ ओझल हो रहा, एक आंसू गिरते गिरते रुक गया है. कहते हैं मारवा को किसी आकार में समेटना कठिन है. वो पिघलता रहता है, दूसरे रागों में घुल जाता है. उसमें उपज और विस्तार पैदा करना भी आसान नहीं. उसके भीतर वैसे ही कोई बेचैनी, जैसे कि कोई विराग चाहिए. तुम उसे पार्श्व संगीत की तरह नहीं सुन सकते, क्योंकि तब वो सुस्त और बेस्वाद हो जाता है. गायक वादक सब जानते हैं, लोगों को ये राग ज्यादा रास नहीं आता. क्यों व्यर्थ के दुख में कोई पढ़ना नहीं चाहता. इन दिनों लोग अपने ही सुख से लदे हुए मिलते हैं, फिर भी भूले भटके सुनाई दे जाता है. रेडियो या किसी घिसे हुए रिकॉर्ड से फूटता शाम के रंग का मारवा, आमिर खान की आवाज में फैलता हुआ, या पन्ना लाल घोष की बांसुरी पर उड़ता हुआ आकार पाने के लिए तड़पता हुआ. एक अमूर्तन, एक अलौकिकता जो मामूली चीजों में निवास करना चाहती है. पीछे छूटे हुए लोगों का एक गीत जो हमेशा पीछे से आता हुआ सुनाई देता है, और जब कोई उसे सुनता ना हो और कोई उसे गाता बजाता ना हो, तब भी वो गूंजता रहता है, अपने ही धीमे प्रकाश में कांपता हुआ. राग मारवा, राग मारवा. थैंक यू, थैंक यू.
Thank you very much, Ashwani.
ब्यूटीफुल
sir, for
अश्विनी, आपने
concluding
एकदम
that. Very
कविता
beautiful.
को जीवंत कर दिया. बहुत अच्छा आपने पढ़ा, बहुत अच्छा पढ़ा.
थैंक यू. बस सभी बॉम्बे के दोस्तों को भी मुबारकबाद ज्वाइन करने के लिए दे दीजिए हमारे तरफ से. एक छोटी सी पेशकश हमारी है, और मैं कोशिश करूंगा, आज स्मिता हैज सेड दैट we will think about as Suhit, we will prepare for the journey, next edition of Rivers Going Home. Thank you very much. Over to Vasu.
Thank you very much. And I have no words to say after this splendid, poetry reading. Jayant Parmar sir concluding with painting, Ashwani sir concluding with music, and with the spirit of the person to whom this entire book has been dedicated. We are very grateful that all of you gave your valuable time and you could come and join us and celebrate this book and celebrate poetry, because every anthology creates a community, and as Smita ma'am was just talking about how, you know, we need to keep this community going, we need to forge deeper bonds, and she's talking about how Menka ma'am has been very instrumental in this, and she has been able to connect poets, younger poets, amateur poets. She has been able to bring everyone together and connect them with the flow of Indian English poetry. So it has been very, very beautiful. I know Smita ma'am, you know, as academics, we cannot help but think about, you know, poetry and academics together, and how poetry can be a means of academic activism. So she was talking about how punctuations are, you know, we should rethink the idea of punctuations, and she was talking about this tradition in a very Eliotian sense also. So I agree with all of that. So we have had much more apart from just poetry readings and celebrating this book. I think we have celebrated poetry, and we have created more questions, which is basically the need of the day. We have to have questions in order to find out the right answers. So this has been one very, very enriching session, and I'm very grateful to everyone who joined it. On behalf of myself and Jaideep sir, I extend my heartfelt gratitude. And this will soon be up on YouTube, so I'll just say goodbye to the recording session, and I will stop recording.